I got like hit down to the ground by my father. And he was intoxicated at the time, and he was kicking at my mother, and my brother and sister were very young at the time, so they don't remember, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was trying to stand up for my mother. And then later on in life, after what happened, was my mother didn't want to accept that I exposed my father's abuse. And then she went on my father's side and went against me after I stood up for her. So I walked into a room shaking, and I told like 50 to 60 people my story. Thinking about that day is just bringing me joy and emotion, just because it was right when I felt God and everybody just finally could hear my story.
Hello and welcome to Ego is Here. Today I'm joined by Tara Beier, musician, filmmaker, and mother, whose journey through family trauma, creativity, and courage shows the power of reclaiming your voice. Hello, Tara.
Hi, nice to meet you, Anna.
Nice to meet you too. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I was so inspired by your show. It really connected to me with the raw truth of women. So, I'm excited to be here.
So, Tara, can you
Okay.
take me back to your childhood and tell me what life looked and felt like at home?
Yes. I think, when I reflect back on my childhood, I sometimes get nervous about talking about it because it was confusing in a way, because there were some great moments and creative moments and loving moments. And then there were moments of being unheard, being frustrated. Um, my parents had I would say, dysfunctional relationship. My dad was not home very often, and my mother was at home, but they didn't come together very close. There, in my opinion, there wasn't a huge amount of love there.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the first child. I kind of carried it. I was stuck in between my parents, and then I had two other siblings that were, uh, they seemed to be not as affected than I was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they always say the oldest child is the most affected, but I don't want to put that into some kind of stigma or anything. But yeah, so I went into music. So I was playing music when I was 5 years old. And
Mm-hmm.
at this point, I didn't think it would be my career at all. I was like, no, I'm just playing piano. And I thought, I would just do everything for my father. Everything he wanted me to do, I would do it. I would play piano. I'd do good in school. I would obey. And, you know, there is an influence of an Asian immigrant pressure to be a lawyer, be a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
be someone in society. And I had this major pressure. And when I decided not to go that way, it broke my dad's heart. He didn't want to talk to me for 10 years. He didn't care. He was, he basically, the whole family shamed me just because I became an artist, in a way. Like, it was like I left. And so I had my wonderful husband that was there, but I felt completely alienated. Like, my identity, like, I just felt when I was going into my own identity, when I was going my own path, that's when I got rejected from the most important people in my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
So, what drew you to art? Like, was it a way to survive, to express yourself, or both?
I started in theater actually.
Mm-hmm.
I connected with this really cool actual Bulgarian playwright in Vancouver, and he introduced me to all European works. Um, did theater for about a year and a half. Actually, I don't know if you know Dario Fo and
Yes,
Franca Ram.
yes, yes.
So I did a play where I was cooking macaroni
Mm-hmm.
on stage, and the show was called A Woman Alone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, and so that was kind of like the very basis of what my life would be for the rest of my life, a woman alone. And then after that, I explored film, documentaries. I did a documentary called "I Met a Man from Burma," and I helped a Burmese refugee get his status in Canada
Mm-hmm.
after waiting 10 years. So I was interested in the plight of humanity in immigrants. And then I did a film on Buffy St. Marie where I played her and played her music. And she's a native Indian folk singer.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I don't know if she's actually native Indian anymore. there's a controversy on that. But regardless, she's an incredible musician. I don't care what culture or race she is, but I did a film on her, and that led me to start writing my own music and be a singer-songwriter.
Mm-hmm. Were there moments when you questioned if it was worth it to break family expectations?
So there's always been moments um, because I didn't know that when I would go my own way, I would like to call it similar to being in a narcissistic cult in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go against the leader, you go against what they perceive you to be, then the rest of the pack will also reject you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you know that whatever happens, the impact will go down the line. So you can't really trust or be vulnerable with anybody in the family because you know that their perception is viewed from the leader of the cult.
Of course, of course.
So you can't be so you have to be wary of everyone. Um, I ended up actually going into 5 years of psychotherapy where I worked with an amazing therapist, and she basically reprogrammed and like healed my mind. And she told me that she diagnosed me with PTSD. And she just said, like, your parents just didn't give you the proper nurturing in some aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then moved to Los Angeles from Toronto, and I still started to get anxiety. I started to really crumble, and I was so desperate. One day, I had to go to a meeting. So my friend told me about ACA, which is Adult Children of Dysfunctional Families,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a 12-step program. It's not AA, but it's based on the same principles. So I walked into a room shaking, and I told like 50 to 60 people my story. And
And how did
it
that
was,
feel? How did you
oh
feel
my
at
God.
that time?
It was, I mean, I'm just thinking about that day is just bringing me joy and emotion. Um, just because it was right when I felt God and everybody just finally could hear me and finally could hear my story. I was so, when you get shunned out by a family, if your identity is so built
Tied,
by
yeah,
that
yes.
person,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's like, I don't know the feeling. It's such a pain. It's such a pain that no one could feel. It's like, even if you cut your arm off, like the pain inside
Mm-hmm.
from your family, just like shaming you just for going your own way, just for following your own path. Um, anyways, so the feeling was amazing to walk in front of all these people and everybody look at me in the eye and hear my story and actually be like, that's wrong. Like that was not right. You know,
What did you realize about yourself that you weren't aware?
that's a great question. I think I didn't know at that time. I was just coming out to myself, my true self. Um, I didn't realize how vulnerable I was. I was, I mean, it was, I was like like a little girl.
Mm,
Like I was so vulnerable. Um, and I think that that was definitely painful because I was like, oh, I'm just coming out to finding myself now. Like, I wish I knew that myself, like, and I started to explore these things when I was actually a little girl.
mhm.
So that's why they call it adult children, because it's like you have to reestablish everything again. Um, but I do believe that all of this was meant to be and to deepen my relationship with God as much as how hard it was. Um, it took me like a long time to get there. I realized that it made me who I am and into a strong woman. But no doubt, I really feel that it was extremely hard journey. Like I didn't do what society or what my family wanted of me, and to do that, you go alone. Like you have to you are alone.
Mm. And
And I think as an artist, you feel that same way.
how is your relationship with your family today?
My relationship with my parents is civil. Uh, I I am at peace with them. I've forgiven them. Um, I think their perception is still the same of whatever world that they're in. I feel like they're in a limited capacity of perception because of the tools I learned. I realized to have forgiveness. My own father had his own trauma. Same with my mother.
Hmm.
I love them. They're getting older now. So I'm just like, okay, at this point, I've worked on myself. I've done enough work to now just see them. But I'm at the same time, I'm always like they're not interested in me and what I'm doing too much. They don't ask me about my art or
Hmm.
what I'm doing. They're not interested. They're not interested in me very much. But they're interested in my sons. So at this point, I'm just like, okay, let's make peace. You can see the kids, and it is what it is. The damage is done, and but I'm all about forgiveness, But and I think we're at a good place, but it's there was a lot that happened.
Hmm. Do you think filmmaking and music gave you a way to tell your truth safely?
Oh yes, yes, yes. Like I think if I didn't know when I was, so there's what I believe is full circle. So the things that happen to you when you're little, like when I was playing piano, at that point, I did not know that would be the thing that would save my life and find my own voice. Um, it's so interesting how God can give you signs and give you things when you're small or give you these like moments where you think, "Oh no, this is not the way that I want it to be," but it did save my life.
Mm.
Art is for sure in all ways.
So, if I would ask you whether you would choose filmmaking or music, what would you choose if you could only
Uh,
pick one of them?
right now it's music.
Hmm.
Um, the reason I went for music is because of the performing. I knew at that time I could do it because I was young. So I was like, okay, performance requires a lot of stamina to go on stage. You need energy. film does too, but you can also just sit behind the camera until you're like super old and like be able to direct. But definitely directing is something I feel like could happen later in my age.
Hmm. And have you ever created something that scared you emotionally?
Um, I think no, because I feel like every time I do something, it's a stand for where I'm at that time. Maybe if I look back, I was like, oh, I was really going through that at that time, but that was where I was. Um, there was some plays that I did, like when I did a little bit of acting that did scare me when I was in a character. I did a play called Not I by Samuel Beckett,
Hmm.
where I had to play an orphan, and that scared me. I was like, I felt identified with
Hmm.
being an orphan, and and not being able to get the words out, because in the script that's what was happening. The child was trying to speak certain words but couldn't get it out, so that did scare me.
Mm. Um, and did becoming a mother change how you view your own childhood?
Yeah, I mean, I was late to the game. I did actually IVF leading up to having my twins. I had two miscarriages, and then I decided to go the IVF route. And at this point, I didn't know if I would have kids at all. But through the grace of God, again, God gifted me with two beautiful sons. And actually, when I was in the hospital, I had a little bit of complications, and I woke up in the ER, and it was quite scary. But during that time, I felt the presence of God so strongly, to the point that I knew it was God. And God just took away all the emotional feeling I had at my family. And it was like, just forgive them. And it was like, God did it for me.
Hmm.
And when I had my sons, it just completely took away any more anger that I had at my family, I think, because I think God was just like, I'm going to give you this. You're going to have this love.
Hmm.
So I highly advise like people that have had trauma or dysfunctional families just to try to, at some point, work on yourself, do the recovery work. And then if you want to have kids or not, I totally understand if you don't, because I have a lot of friends in recovery that do not want to have kids because they want to focus on themselves, and they want to like take what is lost, like
Hmm.
grab that inner child. But for me, I'm I think my sons they know I'm an artist, so they give me that space to do that, and yeah, it's a huge blessing. So that I think that's what I want to share with people, is that the hardships that we go through are what God wants us to go through. Even if it's the hardest stuff that you're so mad about and you're like, why did this happen to me? It's not fair. Um, I believe that there's a reason for that, and that God is doing it to make you who you are, to make you stronger. And then all the blessings and the gifts and the miracles will come, sometimes after, later.
Tell me, Tara, are there patterns from your upbringing that you refuse to repeat?
Yeah. Um, well, one of them is no violence, no physical hitting or anything like that.
Did you yourself
Um,
experience violence when you were a child?
I experienced it a couple times. Um, Again, obviously you feel like if you talk about it, the whole family is going to come after you, like,
Mhm.
oh, don't say anything, But I can definitely talk about it because, again, I've forgiven my father. He had gone through a lot. He had been intoxicated at the time, and yeah, it was hard, you know. I was young. I was a teenager. I got like hit down to the ground by my father, and he was intoxicated at the time, and he was kicking at my mother, and my brother and sister were very young at the time, so they don't remember, of course.
Mhm.
And so I was trying to stand up for my mother, and then yeah, and then later on in life, after what happened, was my mother didn't want to accept that I exposed my father's abuse, and then she went on my father's side and went against me after I stood up for her. So
Yeah, that's hard to process. Tara, how do you think about raising boys in a world, you know, learning to confront power and abuse?
um great question. I think raising my sons with the feminine perspective, uh not aggressive, not, when you go to the store, you don't have to buy a scary toy.
Mhm.
Go
Mhm.
buy a cute toy. Like, my sons love unicorns and like bright colors and like cute stuff, like teddy bears. They don't want to buy some ugly, scary, um, I don't know, Marvel character that's turning into a monster.
Mhm.
Is that nice? Like, I don't really think it's nice for boys to like scary things. And from the female perspective, completely, like, that's how I see it. And of course, respectful of women. I push that with them. And communication, uh just being able to express their emotions. So yeah, I reinforce, of course, that they're boys, and boys and girls are different. But I am raising them with a divine feminine approach.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
With your criminology background, why do you think powerful systems protect perpetrators instead of victims?
Uh, I mean, one of the reasons why I became an artist was I got my degree in criminology, and then I took a course in corporate crime. And I realized the biggest criminals are corporations. Um, that stuck with me. And that's why I didn't want to be part of any system. I didn't want to be part of the government. Like, I didn't want to be a police officer or work in the courts, because I understood now the whole cycle, the whole system of it's all connected. I think for some reason, women and children tend to be on the bottom line of most of everything for some weird reason, and power and money and patriarchy is ruling, and that is connected very much to capitalism, consumerism. um I mean, even with what's going on with America and Iran right now, um we don't need war. We just don't. It harms children. It's harming the planet. Like, I look on TV and I see like the bombs like blowing up buildings. It's like, you're destroying trees, you're destroying the earth, you're putting chemicals in the air. The children are dying. Like, we need to go from a feminine perspective of women, matriarchy, children, earth. We need to grow. We need to, like, we don't need to be in the darkness. We don't need to be fighting for power. We need to shift that. And I do believe that we're going there. I believe that we are going in that direction of awakening.
Hmm. So when stories like Epstein's surface, what emotions do they trigger for you?
Anger, complete anger. And there's nothing wrong with anger. That the rage that comes hearing about some of these stories of the child abuse, the cannibalism. Um, it makes me sick. It makes me question this world sometimes. I mean, there was times when I was reading the files, and I follow a lot of people that are reading the files with the code number. You know, it's coming from the DOJ. It's not fake. Like people can reference the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and it it's horrifying. I had to stop. I was like, I can't do it anymore. So how I see this to be is that this is old money, male patriarchy. This is in the past. Obviously, this is a sick criminal pedophile, Epstein, who was blackmailing politicians. He was also sick himself. So he himself was sick. Then he was, used to, influence other people to get what he needs. I mean, the whole thing is madness. But what scares me the most is this still happening on other islands? Like I think about child trafficking now. And I think, okay, if that was like 20 years ago, or actually not even 20 years ago, but there's got to be this still happening where there's child
Of course.
trafficking. And I think as women and men, and where we're going as a society in the world, because of the truth coming out, this is a blessing. This is a good thing. Like I kept saying to myself, like, it has to be that God wanted this to be out so that we can uncover the truth to stop this from happening again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I'm trying to be hopeful that, obviously nobody wants to hear scary, bad things that are happening, but we need to hear it. We need to see the truth. And I think as an artist and just my characters calling out abuse, calling out the bad things that are happening, we need to do this. Because if we don't, then it's going to be hidden and it's going to go under the cover and then it's going to grow into a disease. And that's why it needs to come out.
Mm-hmm. So do you think society still underestimates the harm caused by power imbalances?
I think most people don't want to deal with the horrors of what's happening. I also think most people are just trying to pay their bills and feed their kids and get through their day. Like they don't have time to like go run and take over the government and say like this is wrong. I think the younger people though, the Gen Zs, they are really doing an amazing job online. They have to protest more, I would say. The power protest is what we need to do. We need to get out there, either protesting online, spreading the word between your friends and family, lightly, of course, not in an aggressive way. Like I told like two moms the other day about the Epstein files, and one of them didn't even know about it. And then I told her, and then she went down the rabbit loophole, and she's like, Tara, I went down the loophole. I read about it, and like, oh my God. And just by that one interaction, I was able to just like spread awareness, because we have to protect our children.
Of
Period.
course. So you've been in the entertainment industry for very long. Have you ever experienced abuse?
I think what I did was I got married like earlier to avoid. I have been in situations where I think I did an audition at some guy's house once, like in Toronto,
Mm-hmm.
and that felt super awkward. I was like, what am I doing here? Um, I've been to some parties where I thought something could have been in the drink, and I, immediately got myself out of there. But because I think I can feel the energy of Hollywood, I very much protected myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I've gone kind of my own way, like the independent way, because I don't want to sell my soul. Sorry. Because that's what ends up happening.
Mm-hmm.
And now with everything that's coming out, you're starting to see that actual celebrities and artists are selling their soul. And you hear about it, you're like, oh yeah, no, that person, but no, now you're actually seeing it. You're seeing people sell their soul. And so I have never done that. It may have taken me longer, but at least I didn't sell my soul. And I'm happy to protect that.
Tell me about your best moment in the industry and your worst.
um, I would say my best industry, I loved playing the Troubadour in Hollywood. It's a really famous venue. Um, Elton John's played there, from every kind of like songwriter, Carole King,
Mhm.
Joni Mitchell. So I got to play the Troubadour twice in my career, and it was a huge highlight. Like I'm like, oh my god, that to me was the biggest moment. I think performance, when you get recognized by that venue and they're willing to support you, it can feel really good, even more than like press.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. There's something magic about that. And then I would say the worst feeling I had in my career was, I remember I was planning to be an actor. I wanted to be an actor for so long. And I think I tried for like 2 years, and I went for a meeting with an agent. This was right before music. And this agent was like, you don't look like the picture that you have. And she picked up a picture, and then she looked at me, and I was like, this is so weird. And it was so rude, and it hurt me because she didn't want to know me as like for my talent. She was judging me on my looks.
Mm.
And at that time, I thought I was going to die because I had worked so hard for this meeting. And I
Yes.
remember getting in the taxi cab, and I was just like, oh my God, I just gave up my family who doesn't want to talk to me anymore. I gave up my, degree. I was going to be a lawyer to be this actor, and this is not working out. And that was a hard blow. I remember that moment.
Yeah.
But it was meant to be, because if that didn't happen, I wouldn't go into music,
Of
and I
course.
wouldn't have gone into film. And I had films that made it to TIFF, and so again, when those bad things happen, or where you think there's setbacks, they're actually part of the journey.
And if you could ask yourself a question, what would that question be?
Um, that's a really good question. Do we really have to have a purpose here in life, or can we just exist and just be here? There's this constant pressure to be like, you need to find your purpose. You need, and then you got to go this whole like sharp
Mm-hmm.
way. And I think it's like this American dream kind of way that I at first it ruins the art. It ruins the existence. This whole thing of the pressure to get this American dream, to go here, to go there, like to get this, to be super famous or to be super rich. Is that really the purpose? Can you just exist? Can you just enjoy like walking and looking up at the sky and the flower, and just enjoy your kids or a dog or like some food? That's where I'm constantly balancing. I'm in the middle of that all the time in my life.
Yeah. So what does success mean to you?
I think success is just finding what how you want to live. For me, I think if you go all the way out, and you think that that's what you want, but maybe you want other things too. For me, it was like, I need a stable home. That was really important for me. I need son, uh, stable family is important. I think family is huge. Building your world, good friends, love, seeing the world. I think that has to balance just doing, music, or just doing any kind of career where you're just like focused on that and the success. My parents put a lot of expectation on us with success, and it actually took away from my voice. It took away from my happiness a lot, because we can just exist literally doing nothing, and that should be enough.
Yes, yes. So with PTSD, what still triggers you to this day?
Uh,
Many things?
Yeah. I mean, we got broken into once when I was like 13, and a guy came in the house and tried to attack my older sister.
Oh.
And yeah, he fled, and I was like 13 at the time. My dad wasn't home, and so we ran upstairs to the bathroom. I was like shaking, and we called the police. The police came, and they could never found the guy. Staying home by myself at nighttime is really hard for me, because I'm always scared of like an intruder. PTSD also is affected by always feeling that you're not heard. I think this links a lot to what we're going through as women, especially with the Epstein files. And, it's like, when are you guys going to hear us? There's this feeling of never wanting to, there's a feeling that of being gaslit, where you feel like nobody understands you and nobody wants to hear you. And I think that's one of my triggers.
Yes.
Probably.
Why do you think it's so hard for victims to be believed?
Because they were told. I mean, I think when abuse happens, you're in the system. You're in their box. And I always link back to narcissism in a way, because narcissistic cults, or people, the abusers, they see it how they want to see it, and they impose those thoughts on you, the victim. And the victim starts to think like the abuser. In fact, you could be abused enough that you also become an abuser. That's,
of course, yes,
super common. So it takes like years and therapy and program to break out of the bubble of perception from the abuser, if that makes any sense. And then when you break out, and then you start to think for yourself, because they don't want you to think for yourself. They want you to think like them. And that is the crazy part. So then when you finally find your own voice and you finally speak your truth, then you get re-abused, because they're like, no, you're not allowed to say those things. So you get double abuse. And and that's what ends up happening very often.
Yes. So you've been through therapy a lot. Can you tell me something that people usually struggle with, but they're not aware of when it comes to their beliefs?
But they're not aware of. Yeah. I think people care a lot about what other people think. That is so important. If you say something, sometimes people think, oh, what would my parents think? What would my partner think? And breaking out of the mold of what do these people think of me, and actually having the space to breathe, to speak what you think. And this is something I'm putting with my boys a lot. It's like, it's okay to speak your mind. you're in a safe place to say what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people that have been in abusive homes were taught A, not to feel, and B, there was not a space to feel anything. You were not allowed to feel anything. So if you feel, then you know that's a threat. And that's why art and theater I started with theater and I went to film, and then obviously back full circle to music, is because that was the safe channel, the channel that I could put all of my feeling in through art. But at the same time, I also want to point out that it's not like you're not just an artist because you want to put all your trauma into it. I believe that people are artists because they are actually talented. And I
Yes.
think God gives you
Yes.
that
Mm-hmm.
talent
Mm-hmm.
from when you're born. And I also have no problems with my parents now. I love my parents. We're at a very good peace, but I do believe that it's important to spread awareness for women or anybody in situations of suppressions and abuse where your voice is gone, or if you decide you want to go your own way, your own life, to know that um, you're not alone. You can get help. You can get support by communities, and um, if you want to go the full way, then spirituality and God is like there for you 100%. Like God is there for you the whole time. Like my friend, she said to me, you know, if your mother's not there for you on Mother's Day, or you don't feel connected to your mother on Mother's Day, think of Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like look, Mother Earth is giving to you. So we can grab love and God from nature, from lots of places that's going to fill us. Like people are not going to fulfill us sometimes. It's never going to happen. Not on my journey. People don't fulfill me. Like for me, it's like, okay, I have to fulfill me. I have to go to the ocean and nature and God, to animals. Um, yeah, human beings are really complex.
They are. They are. We are. If you could sing one part of a song for anyone who survived abuse, which song or lyrics would you choose and why?
Um, I think one of my songs, here in the Sage, "We Must Believe That We Can Make a Change." That was a song that was picked up for actually Biden's inauguration in 2021, um, for the nurses campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be it. It's like we must believe that we can make a change. Like as much as we think that we can't, or it's too hard, we have to try. We have to try. Like it's so hard. Like people need to know that if you want to help yourself, you have to like really work on it. It's hard work. I did my recovery, my 12 step for a year.
Mm-hmm.
We went through a whole big red book. I had like my group over at my place in the desert. I had like kind of like a escape away kind of seminar, and we all had our books and we all talked about our experiences, and it's like it was like school. But if I didn't go through that at that time,
Mm-hmm.
learning about humility, learning about making amends, um, one of the things that came out to me that was super strong was it's okay to make mistakes. Like if a lot of parents don't teach their kids that, especially with this hard expectations, like it's okay to make mistakes, you know, and just this is not a race. This is not a competition. You don't have to be the best. Um, it's okay to just be.
Yeah, and that you can never succeed if you do not fail at first, because that's the way you
Yeah.
start walking. That's the way you fall so many times and then you're able to walk. It's like
Yeah,
training
no, totally.
yourself. Yeah, yes, yes. So tell me, Tara, what are you up to now?
Um, I just finished. I had my album on the Grammy ballot for Best Americana, and it did very well within the Recording Academy for an indie.
Mm-hmm.
And now what I'm doing is I have a new song called Desert Soul Remix, and I'll be bringing that forth to the Grammy category for Best Remix. And I am also writing a social impact song called Flower to the Gun. And
Oh.
it's about saving the children. Um, it's about connecting with women and the earth and rising up in the feminine. Um, People that have influenced me on that song would be Kate Bush, Annie Lennox. It's kind of an 80s um, cinematic pop song, but it's still rooted in folk. And so I'm doing that and just raising my sons and trying to be a good mom. Um, just I'm involved with my son's school. I'm helping with the fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm balancing both worlds of like fulfilling the motherhood and then fulfilling my artistry. Um, yeah, and just taking it easy and finding balance. I think when you ask about success, I think being able to have a family and do it right, and then also do your art and do that,
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's success. Because it would suck to like go all out. And then like I've seen families and like kids get screwed up because their parents aren't home or, they have a nanny raising them. It's like, no, I didn't go through all this for nanny to raise my kids. Like I'm raising my kids.
So, Tara, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your journey. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. You had wonderful questions. This is why I loved your podcast. I just was just like, I could feel your energy. You're so good at the questions you ask and your entire energy. It feels just, I would love to know more about you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll have time after the episode.
Yes.
And to all of you out there, remember, as we always say, ego is here. You are here. And that's enough.